Welcome to Tales from the Tarot podcast, where you can learn about the tarot not from a book, but from people's lives. I'm your host, Tara, and I invite you to join me and my guests as we break down the human experience through story, myth, and archetypes. It is the new moon right now, and Erin, you are the very first ever guest of Tales from the Tarot podcast. Woohoo! And it's going to be exciting tonight because you chose the moon card. And I'll just tell whoever's listening that Erin is my cousin, and Erin is a Cancer.
Mhm.
And a mother of two and an artist. She's an artist and she lives in California, and she's just always doing really crafty stuff with her daughters. And so tonight we are going to talk about the tarot.
Woohoo!
So, Erin, what draws you to the card that you chose tonight, the moon card?
Let's see. Everything. Um, I have been fascinated with the moon since I was since as long as I can remember. Um, I I love looking at it in the sky. I love thinking about it, and it almost feels a little bit magical, if you will. So yeah, everything draws me to.
I'd have to agree with that magical part for sure. Um,
Just thinking about it.
Remember when I was a kid, Mom had this album by Cat Stevens. Do you remember him? He's like a folk artist from the 60s, I think. But he had this like children's, I guess it was like cover art for his album, but I think it was also like a children's book, or at least the artwork reminded me of that. And it had this big moon on there, like I think there was a cat walking near this moon. And I was just so drawn to that art. I was like, whoa.
There's something about it. I mean, myth, legend, everything relates back to, some sort of magicness, if you will, about the moon.
Yeah,
Um,
it does. So, what would you say the moon means to you as an archetype?
I feel like at the basis, the moon as an archetype is kind of trusting yourself, trusting your own intuition. I did notice that a lot of the earlier things about the moon that I read for tarot actually they felt like they had a fairly negative connotation as far
Yeah.
as and then I got a new deck more recently. I'm sure I've talked to you about this one. It's the Light Seers deck.
Mm-hmm.
She had a really cool interpretation of it, and basically in reading her interpretation and all of the other ones, I think at the root of it, it's getting down and trusting your gut, trusting your intuition, and trusting in yourself to
Mm-hmm.
make the decisions that are right. Turn off everything else, close your eyes, and just trust in your own gut feeling, whatever.
Mm-hmm. So, do you not believe any of those scary, negative things that some of the tarot books say about the moon card? Do you kind of just like dismiss that, or do you think there's any truth to that?
I mean, I think there's absolutely truth. There's a lot of things, undercurrents that go on that we don't pick up on generally, right? And so they're kind of telling you to look beneath the surface, if you will, at things, and there's absolutely value to that. But I've tried to, over the past year, I've been trying to make my life more positive and try to see the positivity in that. And yeah, it's kind of alarming to think that there's something else going on that you aren't quite aware of, that you need to figure out. But
That's
at the
true.
end of the day, if we can believe in our own strength and our own power, so to speak, then we can usually figure it out and get to the bottom of it. So while it's alarming, it's it's kind of a wake up call. You just pay attention to what's going on around you, and trust yourself. At least that's how I try to look at it.
Yeah, and then the moon has such like a nighttime energy too. So it really is this theme of darkness, I feel like. and we are navigating in the dark with it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like we're navigating in the dark without a light. Like, and all the shadows are around us and they're all wonky and we're like having to navigate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you think about it, like walking through a dark room, like after you've just turned out the lights and trying to get across the room, and it's like you can't see anything, but you have to trust. Okay, I remember how my room goes. I'm not going to stub my foot on the table too hard. I'm going to feel my way across and get to where I need to go. Um, and
Yeah.
if you trust yourself, that's when you start, slamming into everything. You start tripping.
Um, and that moon, it's like it has no light of her own. It's
Mm-hmm.
a rock in the sky that make it doesn't generate any of its own light. So it's interesting to me, like how everything it's just like mirroring other light or reflecting other light. It's like, what does that mean for us? like, like as an archetype, like is it just like that we're just magnetizing when we're in that moon archetype? Like we are just in the feminine energy?
Well, and it maybe a self-reflection. It's it's reflecting the light of the sun back, and it's telling us to kind of reflect on where we're at and what we're doing. um Even if we don't see the light in ourselves right now, sometimes self-reflection helps find that.
Yes, that's it. Because we might not have the conscious piece of it yet, but even just taking that pause, like that stillness, you're right. It's like something clicks or like you get a sense of what needs to be done, even though you don't see the whole story yet, maybe.
Mm-hmm. It helps make the first step.
Yeah. Next question is tell us a tale of the moon in your life. This could be a time you connected with the moon or had a moon-like experience or really embodied that type.
So let's see. Like I said, I've connected with the moon a lot over the years, but in general, the story that I kind of would say is most uh important to me about the moon is there's actually a symbol, hello.
Mhm.
If you've heard of it, you probably have heard of it, the triple moon goddess, right? I think we've talked about that
Yes.
before.
Uh, Mother Maiden Crone, right?
Yes, yes. And it's really, to me, when I came across that symbol, it was important in that as a woman, it represents, right, those three stages: the mother, the maiden, the crone, right? Or maiden, mother, crone, however you want to say it. And so much so that just it resonates in the fact that all of our life we change. When we're younger, we're kind of naive. We really don't have much idea of what's gonna be in store for us. We might think we do, but we we don't. And then as we become a mother, and whether it's having an animal, whether it's having a child, whether it's having a friend that you have to help take care of, you kind of develop a different sense of knowing. And then once we move past that stage and we're into the crown stage, it's like the wise woman. I've seen it all. I've been there, I've done that, and let me give you a little bit of advice, kind of thing. So it's really neat that the moon can embody all of that based on how, the season, or the phases of the moon, as I should say. And it really, it means a lot to me personally, because it's just it at the root, it's kind of who I am, right? Like I'm going to go through all of those stages in life.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Interestingly enough, here's a funny little story about the triple moon goddess. I went to Salem too many years ago to count. And my husband and I were walking through, and we were outside of the main graveyard. And up on the side of the building, someone had painted this mural of a picture of the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And it was one of those things that was so beautiful and so moving that we stood there in the dark, just staring at it for a while. And then the next day, happened to walk into a store, and there was this necklace, and it was just like it was perfect. And so, that's where I got the necklace. So it's kind of fate, serendipity, whatever. Yeah, it
Yeah, like
was
the
really.
moon guided you to her.
Hmm. Absolutely.
I've heard other stories like that where people, I've heard people tell stories like that about an ancestor had a certain piece of jewelry that they loved, and then their ancestor passed away, and then the next day they like found it in a store. Like the weirdest things will just happen to show up. Like, okay, well, I'll move on to the next question. Are there any movies or pop culture influences that remind you of the moon archetype?
Actually, I think there is. Have you heard of the movie Onward? I think it's a Disney cartoon, and it's about this set of brothers that their dad has passed away, and on one of their birthdays, they get this magic staff from their dad because it's all about myth and fantasy, right? It takes place in a time where there's fairies and unicorns and all sorts of mythological creatures, but like the unicorns are the raccoons of the world. So they're like, it's just weird, kind of a weird connotation, but everybody is a magical creature, but they've moved on from magic, right? Nobody knows how to do magic anymore. It's one of those, oh well, it might have existed, but that's kind of a fairy tale. Um, and they figure out that they can, using this staff that the father left for him, they can actually bring their dad back, um, and be able to talk to him in some way, shape, or form because he went missing, right? So they don't know where he went, and they do this spell to bring him back, but something goes wrong, and they only bring him back from the waist down,
Oh.
and they have like I think 24 hours to find the some magical thing I can't remember now, in order to complete the spell to bring the rest of their dad back, right? But they go on this movie with this bumbling pair of pants, and try to find this magic that, one of them has magic, but the other one doesn't. And the one that has it doesn't believe in it. He doesn't believe in himself. He doesn't believe he can accomplish what's needed, right? So the entire movie is about his brother helping him realize that he really does have the ability to do these things, and he has to trust in himself for his abilities to basically start working, right? um I think that the most poignant part in the movie is where he's built this bridge supposedly, but you can't see it. And so, in order to get across, he's got to trust and start walking across. He's got to trust that he's done what he was supposed to. And there's that moment that I think we all have where, can I do this? Like I think I can do this, but I'm not sure. And until we actually take that leap of faith, you'll never know. So it reminded me of the moon, and that it's a leap of faith that we all have to take. We have to trust that our minds, our bodies, our hearts know what they're doing. Um,
Yes,
and even if we can't see what's going on, we have to take that kind of leap and trust.
that's big. What advice do you think the moon would give you if it was a person, or what do you think it would say?
Hmm. Slow down.
Oh, I
Listen,
love
yeah, yeah. Listen to your body, your heart. Listen to everything, and don't make a rash decision. You
it.
know, we have time. Um, yeah, and probably to the effect of maybe keep the faith. It doesn't necessarily look so good right now, but eventually, my dad tells me this all the time. Whatever's going on now, in 10 years down the road, it's not going to seem quite as horrible and detrimental. Just trust that things are going to work out the way they need to work out. We can feel really lost, a lot of times when we get the moon card drawn, and it's that, find your inner peace, and once you do, things start to come together. The whole picture starts to appear out of the darkness.
It's that whole getting to where you need to go by stopping struggling, or like the solution presents itself when we stop struggling to make the solution,
Absolutely.
thinking out about it.
As we all are wont to do.
Yeah. And you know how I got that? That's because, the moon is number 18, and you can pull out all your eights in the tarot and look at all the eights from the different suits, and you
Mhm.
can see how they match the moon energy. So like the eight of swords shows the woman with the blindfold, and she's trapped and she feels like a victim. Have you seen that card? Where,
Wow.
yeah, and so that is linked to the moon energy because it's like that panic that they're talking about. And if she just stops struggling against the ropes and just relaxes and like you said, slows down, then she can wiggle her way out more gracefully and like find a way out, basically.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's almost like the crazy trust exercises where you blindfold someone, and in order to find their way out, they have to stop panicking and they have to listen to the sound of your voice and kind of figure out how they can maneuver around. And yeah, I feel like the moon is really heavy on that trust. Trust yourself, trust your loved ones, trust that things are going to work out.
Trust your gut.
Hmm.
And sometimes we need to slow down to hear that.
Absolutely. Kind of have to turn everything else off. A bit of a sensory deprivation, so to speak.
Oh, I love that. It's like so much of that card is sensory deprivation, or like the water going oh my gosh, you see like the contrast of the dogs barking and howling is like the contrast of what happens when you're like resisting that depth of submersing yourself, like sensory deprivation, going under and getting quiet. It's so interesting. It's like you have to go under the surface.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's kind of funny that when we talk about it that way, it makes me think of, have you seen Stranger Things?
Oh yeah.
It's that whole concept where she can't connect with her power until she turns everything else off. She has to close her eyes. She has to, in the early ones, she had to submerge herself in water so that she didn't have anything else and
Right.
allow herself to find inner peace or whatever to get to where she needed to go.
That's such a cool connection.
So how about you? What do you like about the moon?
Hmm. Well, like you said, that it reminds us to not rush and to slow down. I like that it allows you to be messy. I think the moon is chaos, and it's saying, hey, embrace chaos a little bit. Like things can be a little messy. It's okay. You don't always have to be perfect, like you
Mhm.
don't have to know the answer every single freaking minute of every day. Like,
Right.
like nighttime gets to have equal value as daytime. The feminine
Mhm.
gets to have equal value as the masculine. Um,
Absolutely. It's important that we look at both sides too, the light and the dark, and embrace the dark, because the dark is probably where we hide a lot of things that we need to dig up. And
yeah.
uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, I think a good question people can ask themselves for the moon is like, how comfortable are you staying up all night, or, at least pretty late at night alone when it's dark out and you're just by yourself? Like, what is your behavior like at that time? Like, are you terrified? Do you start thinking the worst about everything? Do you like imagine, do you think about all the things you need to get done? Or like, do you kind of go crazy a little bit? Or do you like turn on music or make art? Or like, do you call somebody? I don't know. Like, what is that experience like for you? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, because I can tell you a lot about where you're at mentally. It's just once you can find that point where you can sit with yourself and be calm, that it really makes a difference going forward.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support and explore my work further, you can subscribe to patreon.com/readings and rituals.